like that. There you go. If you
Like that? Is that now working?
Should be.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Yep.
it should be working. Let's see if anybody actually gets onto this one. Okay, thank you very much. Well
Okay.
done. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, God is one. Amen. Good morning, Emma. Right, everybody, including Corey, I saw you on the last one. We'll have another go. Hopefully this time you can hear me. This is not quite as good as before, but it's quite interesting. You can hear me now. It's really good. And you'll get a totally different sign of me as well. The screen was locked this way around. Good morning, Margaret. Right, I won't be able, unfortunately, to... okay, you can hear me. I won't be able to comment on what you're saying because as I'm talking and as you're saying things, so what you're saying to me is disappearing. So I won't even be able to greet you. So maybe later on, right at the very end, ask any questions you've got and I'll see if I can jot them down. Anyway, I was saying that the weather here is absolutely spectacular, really beautiful. It's about -6, so a bit like Tony Trevorrow in Ireland. And I'm going to show you just out of the window here so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so, oh, actually all those things would be very much like Thekla and other people in California would know, but maybe that is rather different. I don't know if you can see that very well, but it's looking absolutely stunning out there. I'll have a look later on. You can see the beautiful blue sky and down to the pond. Yesterday, you see where those fence posts are, you could just about see to there, because beyond that was just thick, thick fog and snow teeming down as well. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's see what we have to put up with today. So it's very beautiful. Today we're going to be looking at John chapter 5, verses 41 to 47. Now, if we think about this, good morning again, Corey. If we think about this in terms of a trial going on, the Lord is turning the tables on the people who are testing him and saying, you know, how can you call yourself a holy man, considering that you have broken the Sabbath by telling somebody whom you've healed to pick up his pallet and walk. Okay, so verse 41. I'm looking at the wrong chapter here. It's chapter 6. I do not receive honor from men, but I know you, that you do not have the love of God in you. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you will receive. How can you believe who receive honor from one another, and do not seek the honor that comes from the only God? Do not think that I shall accuse you to the Father. There is one who accuses you, Moses, in whom you trust. For if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? Okay, and that brings us up to the end of the chapter. Let's make a start then. So right at the very beginning, I do not receive honor from men. The word there is anthropy, so it's to do, good morning Ian, it's to do with men and women. So I do not receive honor from people. Now, the Lord has already mentioned various witnesses, and one of those witnesses is John the Forerunner and Baptist. And according to St. John Chrysostom, it could be a reference to this. And he's saying, although I have actually mentioned John the Forerunner and Baptist, let me just tell you that he's the least of the people that needs to bear witness to me. There's still 3 other witnesses. So from the Father directly, from my works, and from the scriptures that are about me. Whichever way around, the Lord has no need to receive honor from humanity, because after all, if you think about it, he has created humanity and therefore is above everything. He's above all. He doesn't need any sort of honor that any of us might think about giving to him. Okay? So he doesn't need honor. He doesn't seek honor from any people. He doesn't take glory from people. It's actually what the Greek says. So even if it's there to be had, he doesn't receive it from us. It's he who bestows honor on others, as becomes clear at the very end of this passage. Then he carries on, but I know you, that you do not have the love of God in you. And that word there is agape, love, agapetal love. You remember, the love between the members of the Holy Trinity earlier on was mentioned as philos, friendship love, knowing, close association love, a deep love like that, like two friends will have for each other. Here we have a self-sacrificing love. So they don't even have that self-sacrificing love from God. It actually says, tin agape to theou, the love of God within you. But actually it's quite interesting this, because there are different ways you can translate this, and I think probably we have to translate as all of these things, taking into account the way that John, the evangelist, quite often used deliberately, made, not misled, but had double entendres within what he was saying. So, tin agape to theou can also mean the love of God, God's love, which is technically, that is a subjective genitive. Or it could be an objective genitive, which means love for God. It can even mean a plenary genitive, and this is the one I think I prefer. And if you read the Greek and see the context of it, this is the one that makes most sense. But it doesn't really translate well into English, this. A plenary genitive gives the idea of this: the love God gives, which in turn produces a love for him. You can see my fingers now. See one finger here on the gospel book and the other one here in my notes about it. So I can't pretend everything is coming out straight out of the top of my head. Not that I would do. If anybody talks out of the top of their head, then actually they're only giving you half of what they could do. In turn, produce a love for him. So that's that good idea. Let's say it again. The love, okay, plenary genitive. So would be, I know you, you do not have the love of God in you. And that is the love of God, the love God gives, which in turn produces a love for him. Okay, so you've got those two things together. God gives the love, and that love itself induces you to love God. Whichever way around it is, it doesn't really matter, because they don't have any of these loves within them. They know nothing at all about the love of God. They do not love God. They do not have God's love already in them, and they're not inspired by that love to love other people either, let alone God. Okay? So the Lord is trying to show also, he's trying to show by doing, how does he know this? I know you. He knows this because his witnesses that he is called, so that is John the Baptist, God the Father, his works, and the scriptures, all of those show their deficiency in love. They have not caught on to the really important attributes of God. They're thinking very much indeed about how they might do this, that, and the other, fulfill this law, fulfill that law, not do this, not do that, do this, and so on. But the overriding thing, which is important, which is this relationship between us and God, which is based on love, is completely absent from these authorities' minds. They don't love God. Okay? That love is utterly missing from the authorities. The Lord carries on. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you will receive. Okay? St. John Chrysostom says about this, that he's come in his own name, that therefore there'll be no excuse later on. he's told them already, look, I've come in the Father's name. So later on when they say, we don't know who you are, they say, well, you should have done, because I told you. Having come in the Father's name, they have not received him. And then he goes on to say, if somebody came in his own name, and all the fathers then call this person the Antichrist, which means really any false prophet who exalts himself over Christ. And that's how you can tell a false prophet. If the prophet does not recognize Christ as being God, then whatever other God that prophet exemplifies is not actually the same God as the Christians hold to, because our God is a Trinitarian God. It is not the same God as any God that is not Trinitarian. Okay, so the Antichrist, any false prophet exalting himself over Christ. Also, anybody acting on behalf of Satan, and you might put those two things together anyway. Nowadays, of course, we have a more subtle way of thinking that. Our prophets nowadays offer us the ability to buy happiness, to buy contentment, to buy love, to buy or get fame, to become rich, and so it goes on. One young man I know has a tattoo here on his chest, and it says, "Get rich or die trying." He's not going to get rich, and he's not going to die trying, because I baptized him. And that's when it was that I read this tattoo on his chest, something that he's rather ashamed of now. He decided that actually Christ is far better than wealth. I'm drinking absolutely delicious Christmas tea here, which was sent to me from America. You know who did it, at unbelievable expense. I think each cupful costs about $30. Anyway, there we go. It is lovely. It does look like Christmas out there, or rather like Narnia. And of course, it's a mere 11 months now till Christmas, so we can begin to start rejoicing in that already. Okay, so anything false coming in the name of its own name, and the prince of lies is Satan, so it's coming in Satan's name, and these things offer false everything. If you look at our society, you can see the way that people have turned to all sorts of materialistic things rather than towards Christ. Good morning, Jovan. God bless you. Happy feast day for Saint Tatiana. We're celebrating Saint Gregory the theologian. The Lord continues, "How can you believe who receive honor from one another and do not seek the honor that comes from the only God?" And that is a peculiar thing. You lot, he's saying, give each other honor, titles, fame, etc., but you are sinful. You're looking for honor from sinful people and from sinful areas. But you are not interested in receiving honor from God. While I was reading this earlier on, I was thinking about down in the valley over there. I'll show you what it looks like already. So to the left of that lumpy hill, we have Shrewsbury. In Shrewsbury is the sad remains of a once magnificent Benedictine monastery that was destroyed by the heretic reformer Henry VIII, and reduced in size, and most of the buildings were taken down and used for building elsewhere in the city. Now, the man who built that was a man called Roger de Montgomery, who was one of the wealthiest people of his entire generation. He held quite a number of different titles. I can't remember all of them, but he was Earl of Shrewsbury, obviously, and Earl of Arundel, and had something to do with Montgomery itself. And he had all sorts of other. He owned a considerable amount of Britain. Hundreds of manors spread out through the entire country. In Shropshire alone, he owns 7/8 of Shropshire, so probably the land that I'm now sitting upon at the moment. Quite a good chance he owned this patch here. And he came over with William the Conqueror, and he was in charge of the right wing of King William's army. There were several Williams that came over that time. Anyway, Roger was there, almost certainly there. Some people say he wasn't, that he stayed in Normandy and looked after there. He died in about 1094. Sometime around about then, 1090s something. Anyway, about 3% of England's gross national product went into his bank account every year, which, interestingly, was about £2,000 a year. And he had all of these titles, lots and lots of them. He married twice. He had 11 children, I think, one of whom died. One became a priest, another one became an abbess. But it's quite clear that as time went on, he lost confidence in his wealth and prosperity and power. And what he did then was he founded this monastery, and he's buried within it. I'm not sure whether he became a monk at the end. Something in the background of my mind says that he didn't. But he's certainly buried. He was buried in the nave of the monastery, and you can go and look at his effigy now if you want to. But he was somebody or other who received all sorts of honours from King William. He resented King William's son and rebelled against him, actually, but then gave up and did quite well because, of course, King William II prevailed and took all the honours and titles and lands of the people who did rebel. But he's an example of somebody who was magnificently wealthy, but began to realize that all this wealth and honour and everything else was actually going to be of no use to him. Anyway, people tend to give honour to each other. I just saw a moment ago that Phoebe says about academic titles. Yes, academic titles are mere nothing about what clergy give each other. Just one little example. The very Right Reverend Archimandrite Father so-and-so, so-and-so. Then a whole series of letters and initials after one's name. All of these are but nothing. They are utterly worthless. All we need, the only title, the only honour that we need is God saying to us, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into my joy." Everything else is a snare and a delusion. Of course, these things can be put to God's service, but they need to be held lightly. They don't confer anything on bones. All our human honours and preferments and titles and qualifications are meaningless once we are rendered down to being bones. Anyway, here we go. So we have to rejoice and receive honour from the only God. Some of the Greek texts only have "from the only," but in fact the better texts actually say "from the only God." And although in the Old Testament it quite often says "from the only," so that the name of God, the word God, doesn't need to be written down, nowhere at all elsewhere in the New Testament does that happen. It always says "the only God." The Lord continues, "Do not think that I shall accuse you to the Father." He won't. Jesus won't need to accuse them because he's come not to condemn but to save. He says, well, there is one who will accuse you, and that's Moses. Because after all, Moses in whom you trust, because he wrote about me, and you don't believe what he wrote. Everything that's written in the Old Testament is about the Lord. And like I said the other day, you have to read the Old Testament with the Lord in mind, and then everything becomes clear. It's interesting to read the story, read the sacrifices in Deuteronomy, which some people say are interminably boring because they're all the same old thing again and again and again. But if you really do read them carefully with the Lord in mind and Holy Communion in mind, they come alive. They become obvious. You see what it is that God is trying to point people towards. There's some wonderful communion sacrifice of Christ on the cross, the resurrection, the ascension into heaven. All of these things are prefigured within all of that. The red calf, the ashes, the goat being sent off into the wilderness, the other goat, poor old thing, both of them having a terrible end, really, being sacrificed. Okay, so the Lord is saying, if you don't believe what Moses wrote in black and white, you're not going to believe me. You're just not. You're not going to believe my words. And the interesting thing there is that in English it says, if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? And you might think, oh, logi, from logos, words, and begin to let your ears prick up and think, that's good. That is the title of Christ. But actually it isn't. The word that the Lord there uses is rimasin, or rimasin, I guess, as the accent is on that first bit there. Rimasin, which means my utterances, the matters that I bring towards you, the topics that I share with you, the subjects and precepts that I have with you. So, if you do not believe his writings, what he's written, his laws, you're not going to believe my laws either. It's got that sort of feeling to it. If you don't believe his commandments, you're not going to believe my commandments. That's the sort of feeling that you need to get out of this. So the Lord has got to a point, and it's interesting this, because the Lord talking about, if you don't believe his laws, you're not going to believe my laws either. Interesting, because we said the other day, this is almost certainly taking place at Pentecost, where the Jews celebrate the giving of the law by Moses. So the Lord is really saying, okay, this great big Pentecostal thing that you've got going around you here, absolutely hopeless, not interested. You're not keeping those laws. You don't understand that those laws and sacrifices appertain to me. Moreover, what was the law really about? It was what happened after you left Egypt. And the Lord is saying, and I've found myself back in a new Egypt with oppression and lies and slavery to evil. And that then sets the scene for chapter 6, which is all about eating Passover, followed by crossing the water, followed by working for heavenly bread, followed by a discourse on Holy Communion, new laws, the new precepts of God, and so it goes on. So the Lord at this point he's saying, I'm now in a new Egypt. But tomorrow, when we enter into chapter 6, we'll be learning all about the freedom from oppression, the new Passover meal, which is going to be the Eucharist, which culminates in the feeding upon Christ himself. Okay, our new Passover lamb. There we go. I've not the slightest idea how long I've been blathering on for, so I can't see what it is I'm doing here. Neither can I see how to stop. Oh yes, there it is. And I've no idea what anybody's been saying to me. So if you need to say anything, say it quickly. If you need any questions, now's the moment, because I'm going to sign off in a moment. God willing, tomorrow morning I will do this. Good morning, Valerie. God bless you. Me talking. I don't know what that's about. Carl, Ahmed, Graham, good morning. So I think nobody's got any questions for me. Okay, right. God bless you. Be good. Have a good day. Please pray for each other. Nicoletta said that her father was very ill and dying and really straining against everything at the moment. So if you pray for peace for him, please, and continue to pray for the others. Okay. Margaret, I know. Is it really only 30 minutes? We might have to add on when I was silently talking the other one. Right, here we go. I'm trying to switch myself off on the computer, and I'm on this. Let's give you another little view of the beautiful scene through my winter wonderland out there. Okay. I think I'm put up all the Christmas decorations. We'll have another Christmas pudding. There we go. Right. God bless you and keep you. That's it there. There we go.